Episode 2 of Marvel's Secret Invasion has now been released on Disney Plus, and let's just get rid of all the intros right now and get to the dirty business everybody wants to know about. How long has Nick Fury been clapping green cheeks? This was canon in the MCU the entire time. Props to the man, he's got intergalactic riz. Joking aside though, what I'll be doing here for you guys is just giving you my spoiler review, my thoughts in general about Secret Invasion Episode 2, but I also want to hear from you lovely people. How are you feeling with Episode 2 of Secret Invasion? We only get 6 episodes from this series. I thought Episode 1 was a nice, great start. I'm just afraid the remaining episodes would leave me wanting more, and I'm curious if some of y'all will feel the same or not. But just hopping into it right here, I gotta say, I'm still enjoying the show. I liked Episode 2, but I am feeling a bit empty inside with the show. And like what I mean by that is like, I love what Samuel Jackson is doing with Nick Fury, and again, continuing this exploration of trying to find his footing and become the man we remember. Gravik as this rebellion leader of the Skrulls trying to just take back Earth after waiting for so long to get a planet of their own that Nick Fury promised them. This episode opened up with just recapping the events of the first Captain Marvel movie and the relationship Nick Fury would have with these Skrulls, saying, I'm gonna look for a planet for you guys. In the meantime, I need you to work for me and help me keep my planet safe. After so long, it would only make sense that a group of them would become very impatient and just start taking matters into their own hands. So like, I'm totally behind the motivations with the villains and what they have going on. Like, the story to me feels grander than the show is letting it on to be. I'll tell you what I was feeling though is the excitement that the big villain Hourglass has finally made it into the MCU, man.
Titanium blades, they cut through diamonds.
I'm not wearing any diamonds.
I was itching my head wondering why this guy looks so familiar. Then I realized, I hope Nick Fury is wearing diamonds. I do want to talk about the Colonel Rhodes scenes in this episode, because that's someone I was looking forward to seeing in Secret Invasion. Colonel Rhodes has always been one of my underrated favorite characters in the MCU. I just think there's so much more you could do with him as War Machine, and I'm very excited to see him get his own movie with Armor Wars. And every scene with Don Cheadle just had me smiling. His little interaction with the council and trying to clean up Nick Fury's mess, throwing in the joke that if Slovakia keeps looking at him funny, he's gonna put on the suit and go to war. I loved all that in this episode, especially kind of the face-off that happens between Colonel Rhodes and Nick Fury. Just like the back and forth that happens between them, and almost Colonel Rhodes saying a lot about what I thought about Secret Invasion, where he's like, look, you're saying there's an alien invasion filled with shapeshifters. We can't contact the Avengers. We can't get anybody. You alone are gonna have to do it. Do you know how crazy you sound? I'm like, War Machine just described how I'm feeling about this series. Okay, yeah. But at the same time, I completely get Nick Fury's point of view here. You start involving the Avengers in here, you call up some super people, then you just put them at risk to end up in Nick Fury's position, where they get blamed for some giant terrorist attack, and it just compromises everything. What I think the most interesting piece of information that was let out during this scene, though, is the fact that Colonel Rhodes has known about Skrulls for about 15 years as part of a government project here. Now, there's already been a lot of speculation. We don't know who's going to end up being a Skrull, and although that could be like a big twist reveal that Colonel Rhodes this entire time has been a Skrull, I don't know if I would love that. I would like to believe that there is still an actual Rhodey out there somewhere, and that this entire time in the MCU, we haven't been following a Skrull. But I think the show definitely has to have a reason for why they let us know that Rhodey is aware Skrulls are out there. He's known about their existence, but right now he's not going to take Nick Fury's warning about what's going on seriously. Now, I do like what Episode 2 set up about the Super Skrulls, because that's something we figured was coming in here. Heck, in one of the trailers for Secret Invasion, we see Gravik having Super Skrull-like powers. Now, the most common Super Skrull you'll find in the comics is one who mimics the abilities of the Fantastic Four. And well, since the MCU hasn't really introduced them yet, or even had a Skrull connection with the Fantastic Four that we know of yet, we get a scene where we get an idea of the replacement powers that will kind of mimic the Super Skrull with Fantastic Four powers. So one, it's going to share the DNA of Groot, which I'm assuming they got some Groot DNA from twigs and pieces of him cut off from Infinity War. We have a Frost Beast that came to Earth during Thor the Dark World, so I'm assuming they got a hold of it there. Cole Obsidian, if you remember, his hand got cut off also in Infinity War. And the Extremis formula from Iron Man 3 that is going to mimic the Human Torch side of the powers. The Skrulls are working to gain these abilities through a machine that Gravik is currently building, and we know this from the Skrull they were interrogating in this episode. So I do like this setup, and how they're coming about putting this together just makes me a little bit more hopeful that we might might see War Machine suit up at the end of this series, because I can't imagine Nick Fury's gonna take on a Super Skrull all by himself. I'm sure he could, but I'm curious how the show will handle that battle and how early on they'll give us a Super Skrull, because if the pattern consists with these Disney Plus series, we're not gonna see that type of action until like the last 5 minutes of the final episode. Bringing us to the end of this episode that had my jaw kind of on the floor and wondering what even is going on right now. Who is Nick Fury? Because this man continues to be a mystery. We see Nick Fury heading into a house very casually, expecting us to just meet up with an old friend of sorts, and it's revealed it looks to be his wife. Now, this seems to be the same Skrull lady who introduced Nick Fury to Gravik at the beginning of the episode, so he's aware this is a Skrull, and I guess after years and years of working with them, he grew fond of one enough to marry her. I gotta admit, this was kind of a little bit surprising to me. I think the last we heard about Nick Fury maybe having a wife was in the Winter Soldier when he was in Steve's apartment, but I just took that as him kind of messing around and not really being true. But it doesn't seem like Nick Fury would be the best husband. I mean, Talos is constantly yelling to him about how he's never around, he's never on Earth, you're always away. But his wife does not seem to mind all that much. We don't know how long it's been since we last seen her, whether it's years, months, and she's still willing to greet him with some hugs and kisses. I wonder if Nick Fury having a Skrull wife has anything to do with the fact that he's never put the plan into action to find them their own home, because he knows once he does that, then it's an excuse for the person I guess he loves to leave him. But then that barely makes sense in my mind again with how often Nick Fury leaves her behind. Still, it's something new added on that we didn't know about the character before, and that kind of fits in with something at the beginning of this episode where Nick Fury was talking about he'd play a game with his mom called Tell Me Something I Didn't Know, and well, by the end of this episode, they tell us something we didn't know. So yeah, with episode 2, I'm still invested. I'm actually really digging the story and the villain they have in here. It's again just that sort of empty feeling I'm kind of getting in between some of these dialogue scenes or these grand scale talks of how deadly this Skrull invasion can be, when it just feels like there isn't that much of an urgency. It feels kind of low scale. That's the only thing kind of bugging me, but the show is far from a disappointment, at least in my opinion. Curious to hear from you guys, as well as what you thought about some of these reveals and speculations to what you think will be going down in the next couple of episodes. Don't be forgetting to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.